What do you mean he got a burn because his gloves had holes in them? Kendrick Boone's voice was calm, but his eyes didn't hide the storm. He'd built his industrial supply company from a single rented garage to 17 bustling warehouses across 5 states. Now, 15 years later, he sat in the headquarters boardroom listening to his logistics director explain why a warehouse worker in Michigan had spent 3 hours in urgent care after handling hot equipment with torn gloves. "They're required to bring their own protective gear, sir," the director said, shifting in his seat. "We reimburse after 90 days if they stay past probation." Kendrick leaned back. "So day 1, they're on their own." "Yes, sir, it's policy." That didn't sit right with him. Not after everything he'd built this company on: safety, loyalty, hard work. He didn't like managing by spreadsheets. He used to know every worker by name. But as the company grew, so did the layers between him and the floor. He decided right then he was going in. The Detroit warehouse was one of the newer locations, opened just under a year ago. It had never met him in person. None of them would recognize him, not now. He'd grown out his beard and trimmed his hair short, lost 20 pounds since his last press photo too. His disguise was simple: cargo pants, steel toe boots, and a faded hoodie. His name for the week: Kyle, just a new hire. He arrived just after dawn on Monday. The warehouse was big, cold, and echoing with machines roaring to life. The district hiring manager, a woman named Tara, gave him a quick rundown. "No gear?" she asked, frowning at his empty hands. "I was told it'd be provided." She rolled her eyes. "Not here, you'll have to grab your own. Gloves, vest, goggles, non-negotiable." He blinked. "Where do I get them?" "Store across the street. Don't be late. You're already behind." He jogged across the road to a dingy supply store and shelled out nearly $70 for the basics. That stung. Not the money he could afford it, but the principle. $70 before he'd earned a single cent. By the time he got back, the shift was already in full swing. A guy in his early 20s, lean and fast-moving, tossed him a clipboard. "I'm Drew. You'll be shadowing me. Try not to slow me down." They started moving crates, heavy, awkward equipment that needed careful handling. No automation, just muscle and speed. "You do this every day?" Kendrick asked between lifts. 5 days a week, sometimes 6 if someone calls out. Drew wiped sweat from his brow. "No sick days until month 3, so people come in sick or they quit." "Why?" Drew glanced around. "You'll see." By noon, Kendrick's back screamed. He hadn't lifted like this in a decade. Sweat soaked his shirt. Drew didn't complain once. But when their break finally came, Kendrick noticed him rubbing his hands raw. "Your gloves okay?" Kendrick asked. "Nope." Drew held them up, fingers shredded, padding gone. "Can't afford new ones till next check." "Nobody helps with that," he laughed without humor. "Management says it's our responsibility. Safety's a shared value, whatever that means." Kendrick looked around. Half the workers had duct tape holding their vests together. A woman was using cotton garden gloves with holes at the knuckles. Another guy's safety goggles were cracked. After break, the warehouse manager, Vince, came onto the floor. He was loud, overconfident, and carried a clipboard like it was a badge of power. "Let's go, people." "I see standing, I start writing people up," Drew muttered under his breath. "He's worse when the district guy's not around." Kendrick watched as Vince berated a woman named Pillar for being too slow. She was limping slightly, her ankle wrapped in a brace. "You want to sit at a desk?" Vince barked. "Then go home, don't make me carry you. I'm fine," she said quietly. "No, you're not," Kendrick snapped, surprising even himself. Vince turned. "You got something to say, new guy?" Kendrick forced a breath. "She's working, you don't have to talk to her like that." Vince stepped closer. "You want to join her on the unemployment line?" Drew grabbed Kendrick's arm. "Let it go, man, not worth it." Kendrick bit his tongue, but his jaw clenched tight. He needed to see more. He couldn't blow his cover now, not yet. By the end of the shift, his hands were blistered, his body aching. But worse than the pain was the guilt. He had built this. And somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of the people holding it up. As they clocked out, Pillar sat on a bench near the exit, her brace now off, foot swollen. You okay? Kendrick asked. She looked up, tired. I'll live. Can't afford to miss a day. He sat beside her. You shouldn't have to pay just to work. She gave a soft laugh. Tell that to the guy who owns this place. Kendrick stared ahead. Maybe he just doesn't know. Pillar met his eyes. Then he should. He nodded slowly. He would. By day 2, Kendrick's muscles ached in places he'd forgotten he had. He arrived before sunrise, same hoodie, same busted gloves. The cold air cut through him as he walked past the loading dock where a forklift beeped steadily in reverse. The warehouse buzzed with early shift energy, but nobody smiled. Not even out of habit. Drew waved him over. Hope you ate. Today's truck unload day. No clipboard this time. Just a nod toward the back bay where a long trailer had already backed in. Kendrick followed him silently, noting a group of workers standing off to the side. A man with a shaved head and a limp leaned against the wall, coughing into his elbow. A younger woman leaned down to ready her boot, her knuckles scraped raw. Hey, Kendrick said quietly to Drew, how many people are assigned to unload? Depends on who shows up. Usually 6, but we're down to 4 today. Malik called out again. Probably couldn't afford gas. Kendrick glanced around. We're unloading all that. Yup, 40 pallets minimum. And it's gotta be sorted by noon or Vince flips out. A bell rang overhead. The back door creaked open. Cold air rushed in. Kendrick's breath fogged in front of him as he stepped up to the truck. The first pallet was loaded with industrial air compressors, each easily over 100 pounds. Kendrick gripped the handle of the pallet jack and heaved, his shoulders screaming in protest. Drew moved ahead, already halfway down the line. Stay close, he called. We don't have time to baby anyone. The morning passed in a blur of lifting, dragging, sorting. The radio crackled constantly with Vince's voice barking orders, always urgent, never helpful. At one point, a pallet toppled halfway down the ramp. Kendrick dropped his jack and rushed over. A young guy named Miguel stood frozen, his face pale. I didn't see it coming, Miguel said. It just slipped. You okay? Kendrick asked. My foot. Miguel pulled off his boot, revealing a swollen toe already turning purple. Kendrick looked around. We need to get him checked out. Drew walked over, shaking his head. He's not gonna go. If he leaves, he gets docked 4 hours. That's a quarter of his check. You telling me he's gonna limp through the shift with a busted foot? Seen worse, Drew muttered. Kendrick helped Miguel to a chair near the break area and flagged down the floor lead, a woman named Carla. She looked annoyed even before she spoke. What now? He dropped a pallet. Might have broken a toe. Carla crossed her arms. He can clock out if he wants, but I'm not approving sick time without a doctor's note, and he better not be faking. Kendrick stared at her, stunned. You think he's pretending to be hurt? Not my call. It's policy. Miguel didn't argue. He just lowered his eyes and stayed seated. When the last pallet was finally logged, Kendrick's shirt clung to his back. He tasted metal in his mouth from dehydration. As he grabbed a water bottle from the break room fridge, he overheard voices from the opposite side of the divider wall just behind the manager's office. Tell them the new guy's too slow, Vince said. I don't care if he's dying, he's dragging down the numbers. He asked about safety gear again, Carla replied. He's not letting it go. Then give him the usual line, budget cuts, supply delays, whatever. If he keeps pushing, just say he can go back to wherever he came from. Kendrick stood frozen, gripping the bottle tight enough to crumple it. He walked back toward the floor, passing Drew, who now sorted copper coils into bins. Hey, Kendrick said, how long's Vince been in charge here? Since the place opened. Heard he transferred from the Cleveland site. Same reputation followed him. What reputation? Drew hesitated. He doesn't fire people. He pushes them until they quit. Kendrick frowned. What about Carla? She does what he says. Keeps her head down. She wants his job. On the far side of the warehouse, a woman named Janelle, maybe mid-40s, was struggling to lift a bin onto the conveyor. Kendrick jogged over and grabbed the other end. Thanks, she said, breathless. This thing's heavier than it looks. Why isn't this on the lift system? It's been broken for 6 weeks. I've put in 3 maintenance tickets. No fix, no response. She wiped her forehead with her sleeve, her eyes were bloodshot. "I used to like it here," she added. "At first we had team leads who actually helped, now it's just pressure. Nobody listens unless you yell, and if you do, you're labeled difficult." Before Kendrick could respond, Vince's voice boomed across the floor. "Break's over. Let's go." "Don't make me start writing people up." Janelle muttered something under her breath and bent back to her task. That night, Kendrick didn't go home. He drove to a motel near the warehouse, sat on the edge of the bed, and called his assistant from a burner phone. "I need a full audit of the Detroit site," he said. "I want HR reports, maintenance tickets, payroll logs, everything, quietly. Understood? Anything else?" "Yeah, find out who hired Vince." The next morning, Kendrick showed up early again, this time with a plan. He found Miguel already on the floor, limping slightly but carrying a clipboard. "You didn't take the day off." Miguel looked embarrassed. "I need the hours." Kendrick reached into his pocket, pulled out a small envelope and handed it over. "What's this?" "Just open it later." "Trust me." Miguel nodded slowly and tucked it away. By mid-morning, the floor was behind schedule again. Vince stormed out of his office. "I want everyone on the South Side line, now, and if I see one more delay, I'll start cutting shifts." He pointed at Janelle. "You. Why are those bins still sitting there?" "I'm waiting on the lift." "Then do it manually." "I've already hauled 5 by hand." "Then haul 6. Kendrick stepped forward. "That's enough." Vince turned, eyes narrowing. "You again. You're pushing people past their limits. I'm keeping this place running." "By breaking it." Vince took a step closer. "You want to be next on the cut list, hero." Carla appeared behind him, clearly uneasy. "Vince, maybe we should." "You don't speak unless I tell you to," he snapped. Kendrick exhaled slowly. He had seen enough. He pulled off his hoodie, revealing the company's executive polo underneath. A few workers nearby froze. Carla's face paled. Drew dropped a bin mid-stack. Vince blinked. "What the hell is this?" "I'm Kendrick Boone," he said. "I own this company and you're done here." Vince laughed, but it didn't last. No one else joined. "I've got policies to follow," he said, suddenly defensive. "You want to talk about accountability? You'll have all the time in the world to explain your management style. Somewhere else." He turned to Carla. "You're being transferred, effective immediately. You'll work under direct supervision until we determine whether you're part of the problem or a victim of it." She didn't argue. Kendrick looked around at the stunned crew. "Everyone take 15. Paid." Now, no one moved at first. Then, slowly, people began to sit. Some leaned against crates, others walked out into the daylight for air. Kendrick walked over to Janelle. "That lift will be fixed by tomorrow," he said. "And you're getting a helper assigned permanently." She didn't speak, just nodded, lips pressed tight. He turned to Drew. "You've got ideas." "I can tell. You're going to help redesign the workflow here, starting Monday." Drew blinked. "You serious?" "Dead serious." Miguel approached, envelope in hand. "I didn't open it." "It's a voucher, full medical coverage for the injury. And 2 weeks paid time off." Miguel's eyes began to water. He turned away quickly, nodding. The warehouse was quiet now, not silent but calmer. Tension still hung in the air, but it had shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It was possibility. Kendrick stood in the center of it all, surrounded by boxes, dust, and tired faces that looked at him with something new: hope. By Thursday morning, Kendrick had already begun assembling a temporary oversight team from headquarters. They'd be arriving the following week, but today he was still Kyle, a warehouse worker, just another name on the shift board, and he needed to see the depths of what was truly broken. He clocked in at 5:45 and headed to the west loading bay, where Pillar was already lifting boxes onto a wheeled cart, her movements slow and deliberate. Her brace was gone, but her limp was more pronounced. "You get that looked at?" Kendrick asked, keeping his voice low. "No point." She didn't look up. "They just tell me to rest it and dock my pay anyway." Kendrick nodded and bent to help her lift a bin. The metal edge was dented inward, sharp enough to catch skin. She noticed his hesitation. That one sliced a guy's forearm open last week. Carla told him it was avoidable. She shifted her grip and kept moving. As they rolled the cart toward the inventory shelves, a sudden shout rang out from the return intake area. "What the hell is this mess?" Kendrick turned. A tall man in a company jacket, someone he hadn't seen before, was pacing the intake bay. The returning pallets were piled haphazardly, some of them still wrapped in plastic, others half unloaded. "This is unacceptable," the man snapped. "Where's the floor lead?" No one answered. "I said, where is the person in charge of this zone?" A few workers exchanged glances but stayed silent. Kendrick walked over slowly. "You knew?" he asked. The man turned. "District Logistics, I'm here to evaluate throughput. This is a disaster zone." Kendrick looked past him at the bins. "They've been short-staffed all week. 4 people off rotation, 1 injury, and Vince kept moving people around instead of backfilling." "Then they should have said something," the man said flatly. "They did." The man studied him. "You're just a worker. And whoever told you that should have gone through the right channels. This isn't a suggestion box." Kendrick held his gaze. "What's your name?" "Peter. Peter Nolan." Kendrick nodded once. "Thanks." Peter didn't notice the shift in tone. He turned and barked at a worker stacking boxes. "You stop double stacking those. You want this entire row collapsing?" By mid-morning, Kendrick had been reassigned to the picking line. The scanner gun he was issued was glitchy, its screen flickering. He asked for a replacement, but the equipment coordinator, a tired man in his 50s, just shook his head. "Only got 3 working ones left. We rotate them. Yours is on the list for repair, but it's been on the list for over 2 months." Kendrick sighed and kept moving. The pick station was manned by Janelle and a young man named Ronnie who barely spoke. Kendrick had seen him around but hadn't worked with him yet. He looked no older than 19, wiry, with headphones tucked under his hoodie, one earbud in. "Is that allowed?" Kendrick asked, not judging, just curious. Janelle tilted her head toward Ronnie. "He's got sensory stuff. Noise on the floor overwhelms him sometimes. Carla used to let it slide as long as he stayed on target." Kendrick watched Ronnie scan, pick, and sort without missing a beat. Efficient, precise. But when the noise spiked, a crate dropping, the beep of a reversing lift, he flinched. A few minutes later, the new district guy, Peter, walked by again. He stopped dead when he saw Ronnie's earbud. "Hey," he barked. "Take that out. Company policy, no earbuds." Ronnie froze. "He's not listening to music," Janelle said without looking up. "He has auditory sensitivity." "I don't care if he's listening to whale songs," Peter said sharply. "Take it out or go home." Ronnie pulled the earbud out slowly, jaw clenched, and shoved it into his pocket. His hands started moving slower. Kendrick stepped away from the station and walked straight to the office. Vince's door was locked. Carla's desk was empty. He turned and spotted one of the assistant supervisors, a woman named Sherry, heading toward the break room. "Do you have access to HR files?" he asked abruptly. She blinked. "Why?" "Because I'm Kendrick Boone, and someone in your building just humiliated a neurodivergent employee for a condition that's documented and previously accommodated." Her face went pale. "I'll get the file." "Good. Bring it to the office. And find Peter Nolan. Tell him to meet me there in 10. Kendrick walked into the manager's office and sat behind the desk. He opened the laptop, logged in using his executive credentials, and began flagging incident reports from the last 6 months. 5 minutes later, Peter stepped in looking confused. "What's going on?" Kendrick didn't look up. "You don't work here anymore." "Excuse me. You just violated ADA compliance. You dismissed a documented accommodation without asking questions or checking policy." "That's not just bad judgment, it's illegal." Peter's face went red. "You can't fire me. You're not. I'm the CEO and I can. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Security will escort you out." Sherry entered, holding a folder. Kendrick took it from her without a word. Peter was still standing there. He was wearing headphones. "That's not allowed." "And yet," Kendrick said, "he was outperforming half the floor. You didn't ask. You didn't listen. You just barked. Now get out." Peter left without another word. Kendrick turned to Sherry. "You're stepping in as interim floor lead, effective now. And I expect you to review every past accommodation and make sure they're respected." She nodded, eyes wide. Later, on the floor, Ronnie was back at his station. Kendrick walked up and handed him a small plastic case industrial earplugs designed to filter high-pitched mechanical noise without blocking speech. "Try these," he said. "They're yours." Ronnie nodded once, took them, and got back to work. The rest of the day passed in rough rhythm. The air compressor line jammed twice. A hand truck's wheel locked up mid-shift, but people started to talk more freely, not about problem solutions. Janelle suggested color-coding bin labels for faster picking. Drew proposed a rotating brake system to avoid bottlenecks. Pillar volunteered to train new hires on safe lifting techniques once her ankle healed. By the end of the shift, Kendrick gathered the team near the break room. "I want to be clear, this place is not what it should be. But it will be, starting now. No applause, just tired eyes watching, listening. I'll be bringing in crew from headquarters next week. Not to take over, just to support, and every one of you will have a say in what needs fixing, not just equipment, culture, training, safety, everything." He paused. "I can't undo what's been done. But I can start making it right." Drew raised a hand. "You staying in town?" Kendrick nodded. "I'll be here every day until we've got a structure that respects the people who keep this place alive." Janelle crossed her arms. "This gonna be another one-off. We've had people promise change before. You'll know it's real when you see people who were ignored getting promoted, when broken equipment gets replaced without months of delay, when no one has to choose between safety and a paycheck." She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a single nod. As people filtered out, Kendrick stayed behind. The warehouse was quieter now, but not still. The hum of forklifts, the clatter of bins, the steady rhythm of work continued, but something else was present too, a shift, not in policy, not yet, but in trust. He walked back to the cart bay and picked up a pair of cracked goggles left behind on a shelf. He held them for a moment, then dropped them into the bin labeled damaged equipment. Tomorrow, those would be replaced. And so would everything else that had failed to protect the people who kept this company standing. By Monday morning, the warehouse felt different, not fixed. Not yet, but there was a sense that the silence had broken. Word had spread over the weekend that the CEO had been working alongside them. That he'd seen what most people had stopped trying to explain. Kendrick stepped through the side entrance in clean work boots and a dark button-down. His name badge didn't say Kyle anymore. It said exactly who he was. He wasn't there undercover now. He was there as himself, and people noticed. He met Drew at the west side sorting line. Drew was already logged in, scanning product cases into bins with a new handheld scanner, one of the 20 that had arrived Saturday from headquarters. "Morning," Kendrick said, setting a box down beside him. Drew looked over. "Didn't expect you to be back this fast. I said I'd stay until we got this right." "You did." Drew held up the scanner. "This one actually works. Didn't freeze once yesterday. Keep a list of who's still using broken gear. We'll replace the rest by Friday." Drew nodded and turned back to the line. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. Kendrick didn't need it either. He stepped into the break room where Sherry was reviewing a shift rotation chart. She looked up, surprised to see him this early. "Got the new hires coming in at 9, she said. 5 today, 6 more tomorrow. We pulled from the waiting list like you asked." "Good. I want them trained differently. No rushing through videos, no sink or swim. Pair them with your top performers for their first week. And rotate them every 2 days across departments." She tapped her pen on the desk. "You want them to understand the whole operation. I want them to understand the people they'll be working with. And I want the floor leads to see who takes initiative without being told." She flipped to a second page. "I also flagged 2 names from your first week crew, Pillar and Janelle. Both consistently outperforming metrics, always covering gaps, never late. Move them up. Give them the option to lead training for new hires. If they accept, raise their pay by $2 an hour, retroactive to last week." Sherry hesitated. "You sure about that? HR will push back." "I'm not asking." "I'll handle HR." He walked the floor next, clipboard in hand, not to inspect but to listen. He found Pillar on the north line, her ankle taped and braced better than before. She was reviewing inventory tags with a younger employee, guiding him through each step. "You're good at that," Kendrick said, approaching. She looked up, surprised. "Explaining things, being patient, clear you want to lead onboarding," her brow furrowed. "Is that like a promotion?" "It is if you want it, comes with a raise." "And better hours." She looked at the younger worker she'd been helping. "Yeah, I think I could do that. Good, start tomorrow." As he continued through the warehouse, Kendrick kept his pace steady. On the south dock, the hydraulic lift that had been broken for over a month was finally operational. A third-party repair team had worked through Saturday to finish the job. Janelle was testing it, guiding a bin onto the platform with practiced ease. He waited until she stepped back. "You were right," he said. "That wasn't something to work around, still shouldn't have taken 6 weeks. And it won't again," she studied him. "You're not just here because the cameras are off, are you? There were never any cameras." She gave a short nod. "Then let's make it count." They both turned as a raised voice cut through the air from the far end of the floor. "Don't touch that pallet unless you understand how to wrap it." It was Carla. She'd been reassigned to a temporary operations support role, pending final review. Kendrick had been watching her conduct quietly over the last few days. She hadn't raised her voice until now. Kendrick walked over. A young woman, no older than 20, stood near a half-wrapped skid, clearly startled by the tone. Carla stood over her, arms crossed, frustration worn openly. "I told you to wait for someone to walk you through it," Carla said. Kendrick stepped between them. "Carla," she turned stiff, "step into the office now." She didn't argue. Inside, he closed the door behind them. "I've watched you for 3 days. You've been on time, accurate, and efficient. But I just saw you talk to a trainee like she was already a problem." Carla kept her arms crossed. "She could have damaged the shipment. Then you teach her. You don't bark at her in front of the entire team." She wasn't listening. "Then you find a way to make her listen without making her afraid to try again." Carla's jaw tightened. "You're capable," Kendrick said, "but you haven't unlearned the culture you were part of. That has to change." "Today, what if it doesn't?" she asked. "Then your contract ends this week." She didn't answer. He opened the door. "You've got one shot to rebuild how you lead. Use it." Later that afternoon, the last of the new PPE shipments arrived: 90 sets of gloves, goggles, vests, and hard shell back supports. Kendrick helped unload them himself, stacking the boxes in the break room for distribution. Ronnie came in during the final load-in. Kendrick handed him a sealed pack of ear filters. His own pair had worked perfectly the last few days. "These are for anyone who needs them," Kendrick said. "And you're the reason we're stocking them." Ronnie blinked at him, then gave a small nod and walked back out. By late evening, Kendrick held a final meeting at the end of shift, not in the office, but right on the warehouse floor. "Starting next week," he said, "this site will have its own safety officer, not someone from corporate. A peer, someone you choose." Drew raised a brow. "We nominate someone, you all vote, and they get paid extra to walk the floor, take notes, and report directly to me. No filter. No delay." Pillar folded her arms. "And if someone higher up doesn't like what they report, they won't have the power to stop it." Kendrick looked around. The crew wasn't clapping, but they were still, listening, focused. "This place doesn't run because of policies or schedules. It runs because you show up. Every day, tired, hurt, overlooked. That ends now." He looked down at the pallet jack beside him, the same one he'd used on day one. "I didn't come here to fix a warehouse. I came to fix what I let break." He turned to leave, but someone called out. "What happens if it slips again?" Kendrick stopped. "I'll be here," he said. "Not watching, working, just like you." He left the floor without fanfare. Outside, the parking lot was nearly empty. The sun was setting low behind the lot gates, casting long shadows across the pavement. Inside, the new hires were clocking out with fresh gear in hand. Ronnie was helping one of them understand the scanner. Janelle was walking someone through the lift controls. Pillar was reviewing a new safety checklist. Drew was showing another crew how to balance a load on the new carts. The people who had been overlooked were now the ones shaping the future. And Kendrick Boone knew, finally and fully, that leadership wasn't about building from the top. It was about lifting from the bottom, and staying there until everyone rose.